Hey everybody, it's Alan, and this is part 3 of working on my Parrot Beak in training, and they're all in ice cream containers, and the ice cream containers work well for me. I eat a lot of ice cream, so the containers are just, once they're empty, they're free, and I have a stockpile of them, and they don't last long, a couple years, but that's long enough. The Parrot Beak, I fell in love with Parrot Beak once I was introduced to it because they grow fast and they develop quickly. They do have a little bit of a paradox because once you have a finished tree, they need a little bit more maintenance than something like, say, a juniper or something like that. And in part 1 and 2, I'm just going to continue what I was doing in part 1 and 2. So I'm taking these and putting them into 3 different categories. The first one are trees that are developed enough where I think they can go into bonsai pots, so I'm going to put them into bonsai pots. And then there's another group that are a little bit taller, a little bit larger than most, and I'm going to put them into larger pots so the plants themselves can grow bigger. And then there are some that are nice, but they're just not quite as developed as I would like for them to go into bonsai pots. And so I'm going to trim them up and then put them back into an ice cream container, but give them a new one. You can see most of these ice cream containers are, on their last legs. They've deteriorated some, but still holding together. And Parrot Beak, I swear to God, you could take this ice cream container off of there and the tree would live for another month or 2 with no container at all until all the soil eroded away. So as is the case with the guys in 1 and 2, I'm going to take off the suckers that are coming from the base, and I'm also going to remove all of the long leggy growth. And this is a characteristic of Parrot Beak. That if left to grow, they produce this very long leggy growth. But like I said, that's kind of the paradox. Now this guy here, let me pull this guy down. Let me pull this down here. This guy here is, I don't know. And what I don't knowing about is, if we zoom in, you'll see it has a pretty interesting trunk, and it's got a large scar there, but then right here, it is so very straight. And it's not like perfectly straight, it has a little curve, but it's what's called stovepipe. So it's just as thick here as it is down here. And so the tree loses all of its taper. And then when we get on the top, there's some decent stuff we could do. We could take this branch here that's shooting against the grain, we can take it off and reduce some of this stuff. And make a tree, but I really don't like this here. So then the question is, do I cut it way back, like down into here, and regrow a whole new top? Or do I just leave it like that and hope that eventually over time that will straighten itself out? And once you have a tree, let's say we let this tree grow just as it is, and we choose an apex from one of these 2 guys, which in my brain is right here. Then this portion that I don't like will probably become less and less obvious. So this is one of those where I'm just not quite sure what to do. So what I'm going to do is, one of my tenets of bonsai is it's very Zen Buddhism. And one of the tenets of Zen is if you're confused, wait. So right now I'm looking at that and I'm not liking it, but just not quite entirely sure that I want to take it all the way down to there. I'm just not in that mood. Sometimes I'm in the mood to, yeah, let's chop that sucker. So he's going to go into a fresh ice cream container and then just continue to grow on. And we'll see what happens. And you may think to yourself, but if you don't do that now, and all the rest of this grows and you develop it, and then you do decide to chop it there, haven't you wasted a lot of time? And my answer to that is, if I want to waste time, I go play games on my computer. Okay, doing bonsai is not a waste of time. I understand that there may be a certain amount of development that then we lose, but I think it was in part 2, I chopped the entire top off of one tree, but the top itself made a really cool little cutting because it had almost perfect branching. So at this point, he's just going to stay. I'm going to put him in a new container. And so we'll go on to the next. I have to chuckle at this guy because it's not in an ice cream container. It's actually in the bottom of a liquid dishwashing container. Dishwashing soap. But hey, it works. I eat way more ice cream than I wash dishes. Because this is the only one of these that I have in dishwashing liquid. And this is to wash dishes in the sink, and I use my dishwasher machine. And you cannot put dishwashing liquid in a dishwasher machine or else you get an unbelievable soapy mess that can actually destroy your machine. So as I'm talking about doing dishes, I cut it up. Can we pull this guy out of the pot? There we go. We can see the trunk line a little better. So I think this is a pretty cool tree. It needs something over here, but I can promote some of the growth. See, that's the beauty of Parrot's Beak, is now that once it's been cut back, if something does pop over here, and it will, then I can just let that go crazy and form the branch that I need. So it's not a bad little tree. So this one is going to get the same treatment as most of the ones that are still not quite developed to go into bonsai pots. And of course, that's in my own mind. I'm the one deciding which ones go into bonsai pots and which ones don't. And I'm going to take it out of that pot that it was in and put it in an ice cream container, which will give it a little more room, a little more space. I do believe that the dishwashing liquid container is slightly longer than an ice cream container, but nowhere near as wide. So that's the trick for him, is put him back into a training pot and let him continue on. This tree here is a subject for growing taller. And as is the case with a lot of these guys, it's suckered from the base, and Parrot's Beak are prone to do that. And then we're just going to trim off the rest of it. And it has some nice movement up into here, but it's going to make, in my mind, a much better, taller tree. So that's what we're going to do. Probably promote this guy as the apex. which means that all this other excess growth back here also comes off. So he will go into an 8-inch bulb pan to become a larger tree. Pretty nice tree. I know on the camera there's this big glob of foliage, so you really can't see the movement of the tree. And you know, I've got it like this as I'm showing it to you, so it's at quite an angle. And that is probably the angle that I will plant it at in the 8-inch bulb pan. I'm not going to plant it flat like it is now. I will give the tree a different angle when I put it into the pot. And I think that will send it on its way to becoming a taller, larger tree. And these larger trees are not necessarily going to get huge trunks. If you want to get huge trunks, you put one in the ground and you let it get about 7 or 8 feet. Then you chop it back to a couple inches, 2 or 3 inches. That's how you get big trunks. Doing it like this, the trunk will get large, but it can take a long time. And I'm not looking at trying to get gigantic trunks. I have 2 that I purchased about a year ago that have massive trunks that were, once again, grown in the ground. And I featured them back when, but I haven't featured them in a long time, so maybe I will give them some airtime. You know, they have trunks like this, huge. But that was just from being in the ground and allowed to just take off like crazy. So even though these trees are going to be larger, quote unquote, they won't be giant, massive like the masculine style. They'll still probably have some feminine features. They'll be nice trees, but they'll be more graceful. This next one is sort of an in-betweeny. Let me zoom out a little bit. So it doesn't have a lot of new growth. There's only 5 or 6 stems that have elongated tremendously, like compared to some of the others where it's been, 10 or more. And this happens. So I'm taking these trees and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to put it in a bonsai pot, or I'm going to train it, keep training it in this pot, or I'm going to make it larger. And this tree's kind of like, where do we go? I would say it's hovering between bonsai pot and getting it larger. And I think at this point, the one reason it could go in a bonsai pot is it has this low branch. So if we're doing the rule of thirds, it's already there. 1, 2, 3. This tree is as tall as it needs to be put in a bonsai pot. And I think I just talked myself into putting it in a bonsai pot. This first main branch that also was one of the ones that elongated tremendously, it's a little too heavy. So I'm going to cut it to right there and promote this bud, which will follow this leaf. At the base of the petiole of every leaf on just about every tree, except conifers, there's a dormant bud, and it's going to follow the leaf. So even if this leaf falls off, this bud is going to move that way. And I have a low branch here. The apex is kind of funky. The back branch, this is the back branch right here. But that's my decision. I'm going to put it in a bonsai pot. And I could have just as very easily decided it was going to go bigger. But we're going to put it into the group. They're going to be put into bonsai pots. Okay. This next guy is obviously going to be a taller tree. And I'm going to take the sucker from the base, and then prune off the elongated growths. And then I think this is another perfect example of a tree that's in an oval pot. Although, if you can call it a pot, talk about disintegrating. And the tree doesn't care. Here, put it back. Don't show yourself in public like that. Okay. But I think that this is more of the front right here. And then if we do that as the front, and we bring it up a little more, then this crazy growth right here needs to come off completely. There, much better. And then using that as the front, I'm also going to take even more of the elongated growth. So I think that'll be a pretty nice tree. I've left this as the apex, and it's got a pretty decent nabari. Not perfect, but so he's definitely one of the ones that's going to be put into a larger training pot and grown on so it gets bigger. And from a tree that was very tall to, I don't want to call it a runt because it's super healthy, but it's one of the smallest ones, there's no question. And especially once I take off all the excess growth, it's going to disappear into the viewfinder. Where is it? So this is another one that could probably be, okay, well maybe I zoomed in too much. There we go. So this one will have the ice cream container replaced and end up going back into training as a smaller tree. And I think I'm going to change the front to there. So once again, if we zoom out, you can't do it with your nails. You have to do it with your finger. Oh no, now it's darkening on me. Don't darken on me. I don't know why it does that. Still haven't figured out the technology. There we go. You'll see that the pot is skewed quite a bit. So even though it's going to go back into an ice cream container, I can just as easily manipulate the roots a little bit and get it back into a fresh container and go from there. This next tree I really like a lot, so I'm going to put it into a bonsai pot. And we need to get rid of all the excess growth to really see what I'm talking about. So we'll do that, we'll do that. We'll take this here. I think I'm going to shorten that to there. And so I'm thinking of taking both of these and wiring that one down and wiring this one into place too, and they become parallel branches. So I still have some decision making, but I love the way it moves out into here. So it will be a slanting style trunk, but I don't think I'm going to have a windswept. I would take all this off and push all the growth this way. So I am going to have a balancing branch, either this one or this one, and then have the apex up into here. But I like the movement. I like the gracefulness of this tree. It's got some interesting nabari. None of the nabari on these guys is perfect, but that's okay. So yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty neat tree. If we bring this guy into here. And I'm thinking this is the one I'm going to keep, even though I'm always talking about saving the branches that are on the outside of a curve. If we go like this, with this branch, by the time the pad has formed, it will look like it's coming out of the outside of the curve. But I think it'll actually give the tree a little more proportion. But this is yet another one where it's like, okay, I don't have to do it right now. I can save both, develop them out, see what happens with the tree, and then decide at a later date which one to take off, because one of them needs to come off. Unless something like I really promoted this guy way out to here and kept this guy really small. That's another option. So for now, I'm not going to trim any of that. And I think I will do the wiring that I want when I pot the tree up into a bonsai pot. But I do like the style of the tree. I like the gracefulness of the slant. So that's yet another one that's going to be a bonsai. And last but not least is a tree that actually is even older than the ones I've been showing you. I potted up all the trees so far that you've seen in parts 1, 2, and 3, pretty much out of the same cutting bed at the same time. This tree actually is older. And this tree is a perfect example of a sacrifice branch. So if we look here, we see that the growth on this back branch here is over 50% of the tree. But guess what? It's coming off, because if we zoom in to the trunk, we have just an exquisite little tree just waiting to be developed. So take off all that old growth. So that's basically a sacrifice branch, what I'm going to take off right now. There we go, as it crashes into the camera. And then if you notice, we have a huge cut back here where this branch was way, way, way out. And then I think I need to zoom out just a tiny little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to cut this guy way, way back. But look at the movement on that little guy. Yeah, I need to zoom out a little more. Look at the movement on that guy. I want to swear, because I'm just frustrated with my camera. Damn, why won't it give it to me? Zoom out. Now it's going to darken on me. Oh, now it's too light. Sorry, guys. Yay! There we go. Now you're going to say, man, that's a little wimpy thing. But look at the trunk on this baby. Look at the movement in this tree. It's going to be just a gorgeous tree. And I've cut back some of this growth really hard, but we will now promote the branching, and this is going to be a really, really cool, probably not a mame, probably a shohin. And I could continue to promote this guy in an ice cream container, give it a new container. But I think I'm going to put it in a bonsai pot. And I think I'm going to chop this guy even more too. And then let it regrow. So this would be an interesting tree. And I've been wanting to do this tree for a while. And I had left that sacrifice branch on purpose. I love the movement at the roots. And this is a little bit of stovepipe right here, but once the tree has developed, you'll never notice that. So stay tuned to watch the development of that guy. So that's it for part 3, and that ends my work on my Parrot's beak in ice cream containers in training. And so I ended up with about 10. Actually, it was very equal. So I ended up with about 10 that I'm going to put into bonsai pots. I ended up with about 8 that I'm going to put into larger pots. And I ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 12 that are nice trees, but they just need a little bit more development to go into a fresh ice cream container and grown on for another period of time, probably another year or so, and then put them in bonsai pots too. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and I appreciate all my subscribers. I just hit 700, so if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that button and the notification, and then you can watch these guys continue. And I am going to do another video on putting the 10 into bonsai pots. I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to do a video on repotting the other trees, unless you want me to. So in the comments, if you want me to also videotape, okay, I'm old. If you want me to make videos of taking the taller trees and putting them into larger containers, and taking the other trees and reworking them into fresh ice cream containers, let me know in the comments. Who knows, even if I get one person that wants me to do that, then maybe I will. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm hoping that we're going to get some pretty cool trees from this. I think we're going to get some pretty nice trees from this batch. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.